2, 3, 4. Let me tell you about PuckPedia, stats, contracts, and caps. It's all there for you. One-stop shop for your hockey information. It's a hockey sensation. So log on, log on, log on. If you give a puck, go to PuckPedia.com.
Welcome to episode 7 of the PuckPedia Hockey Show. Today we welcome on David Ludwig, Assistant General Manager of the Utah Mammoth, who, if you guys didn't know, they changed their names and now they are the Utah Mammoth instead of the Utah Hockey Club. David started out his career working for Kurt Overhardt at KO Sports in a hockey agency role for 8 years as a full-time, and then he interned 2 years during his law school. After that, he transitioned over to the Arizona Coyotes, where he was Director of Hockey Operations and Salary Cap Compliance. And then he obviously transitioned to Utah when Arizona moved over to Utah. And now he's an Assistant General Manager focusing on the salary cap in Utah, as well as other areas of the business. We have a great conversation with him. He goes through a bunch of the logistics of moving, as well as the big deal Utah signed in the offseason to JJ Peterka, where they had to do a sign and trade. So he walks through the logistics of that entire deal and how it all came together. Without further ado, let's drop the puck. We now welcome on David Ludwig, Assistant General Manager of the Utah Mammoth. David, how's it going?
It's going great. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Of course, thanks for coming in. The first question I have to ask you is this the first time that someone's referred to you as the Assistant General Manager of the Utah Mammoth in a podcast show kind of setting?
You know what? I think it is. It's the first. Yeah, I think that it is. We're still getting used to the Mammoth name, after the change. So it's nice to hear it. It's got a nice ring to it. We like the logo and the colors and everything. So yeah, I think that is the first time. Thanks for acknowledging that.
It's an exciting time, and you're double rocking the logo there, both on your quarter zip there and the big logo behind you. So way to rep the brand.
Yeah, have to always.
Well, perfect. I just want to get into this. So we wanted to bring David on to give his expertise. He is the assistant general manager, like I mentioned, but he is a salary cap expert for the Utah Mammoth, a capologist, as Hart from PuckPedia likes to refer to him as. He also spent about 10 years of his time in the agency side of things at KO Sports, helping with compliance and salary caps there. So he's on both sides of the salary cap world there. Also undergrad at the University of Colorado, 2005 national champions. I'd be remiss if I didn't also bring on my Blenders sunglasses for this interview for Coach Prime here.
Go Buffs. There we go.
Had to do it. I saw you pull them out in a different interview. But yeah, let's get right into this. So it seemed like for you, like you knew exactly that you wanted to work in hockey. I saw in a previous interview, you mentioned when you were 10 years old that you had listed that you wanted to be a hockey agent. How did that all kind of play out for you, both in undergrad and then you went to law school also at the University of Denver?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I grew up in the hockey hotbed of Los Angeles, California. So, followed the traditional path, if you will. No, when I was 10 years old, that's a true story. My dad found that notebook back at home, and we had a good laugh about it. But so that was kind of always my dream and my goal was to, when I realized I wasn't, probably good enough to play in the NHL, was to, stay involved somehow. So I went to undergrad, kind of with that thought process in mind. I was a communications undergrad, learn how to talk to people and write and that sort of thing. And then, when I did my kind of research at home, I kind of figured out that, a good path to become an agent and stay involved would be to go to law school and get my law degree. So I stuck around Colorado. I went to the University of Denver. So go Pioneers too. I was there for 3 years at DU, passed the bar exam, luckily that year. How I got hooked up with KO Sports is kind of a crazy story, but it was my second year of law school. I was just going into my second year. All my friends had internships and everything set up, and I didn't have anything. And I was, honest to God, I was sitting at home, just on my computer kind of doing some stuff, and we get these career services emails, and typically it's like a spam email, right? So you don't even open it. But like I said, I wasn't doing a lot, so I opened the email. It was like sports intern, click here. Clicked it, hockey intern, click here. And then it was, must have a general knowledge of the game of hockey and be passionate about sports. And I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. So I that whole weekend I worked on my resume and my cover letter. I applied on Monday, and then had an interview Wednesday. They hired me. So I interned for 2 years, and then I was there for 8 years full time. Once I graduated from law school and passed the bar and everything. So yeah, it was I don't know, call it fate or whatever, but pretty incredible learning experience and opportunity for me to work under somebody like Kurt Overhardt, who's been in the business for 30 plus years, and just what I was able to kind of soak up and learn on that side has helped me immensely on this side too. So, it was an awesome opportunity.
Yeah, and it seems like it worked out pretty well for you in your career. And also, like you mentioned, Kurt's reputation precedes himself. You look at some of the other people that you've mentioned that also have worked under Kurt that have now have jobs in the NHL, like Ryan Miller. I think Ryan Martin also, who's the assistant general manager of the New York Rangers, have all worked under Kurt. So he clearly has a good way to mentor and help you, I guess. In your 8 years there, like in the full time role, like what were some of the responsibilities you were doing? I assume a lot of that had to do with leveraging your law degree and also with the compliance of the CBA and salary cap contract negotiations, things like that.
Yeah, pretty much. Mostly was going through CBA, issues, right, player rights issues. Being on that side, and then a lot of it was contract negotiations, contract prep. I think KO is probably one of the few companies that they do their arbitration cases like in-house. They write their own briefs and everything like that. So I would spend a lot of time working on that, alongside the NHLPA, their lawyers. But yeah, so it was not like a ton different than what I do now, just kind of flipping the lens and doing it from that side. And like I said, the what I was thrown into and able to work on while I was there, it translates to this side and really helps me in this job kind of be able to, I can kind of predict what some of the arguments that are going to be used against us and that sort of thing. So yeah, it was an unreal opportunity for me.
Now, did you become an NHLPA certified agent as well while you were over there? And did you also like represent players, or you were kind of just overseeing like a lot of the deals and things of that nature?
No, yeah. So I was a certified agent, and then so yeah, and we would, it's pretty crazy, but you kind of start recruiting players at 13, 14 years old. So yeah, I was doing that, and then had some players that made it to the highest level, and then so I would work with those guys on an individual basis and travel around. And then my other job was, mainly in the office, handling all the endorsement deals for all the pro clients. Like I said, a lot of the contract matters behind the scenes with the negotiations and stuff like that. So, yeah, a little bit of everything. I got my hands on a lot. It's nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like that's the best part of some of these jobs, right? Is like you can touch a bunch of different areas, you learn a lot of different things, and then you can kind of truly carve out your path and your niche and whatever you want to do in the future.
100%. And sometimes you learn a lot from things like that. You learn what you want to do, you learn what you don't want to do, and what you like about the business and what you don't. I love Swift Current, but I don't love going there in December. So going to watch a 14-year-old tournament. So it's yeah, you learn a ton, and like I said, it was a, I guess, a fire hose coming at me, and you just try to, like I said, soak up as much as you can. We had 6 agents at the time, so I was the youngest guy coming out of law school, so I had Kurt Overhardt, Kevin Magnuson, Joe Oliver, Cam Stewart to kind of lean on and learn from, and they like I said, they taught me everything I know, so I got a big credit to them.
It's awesome. And then, so you do 8 years there, and then obviously you switch over to the team side. You accept the role with the Arizona Coyotes at the time. What kind of triggered that change for you? Were you kind of like at a point where you wanted to accomplish more, like on a team side? I know in your interview, I think Bill had showed you the Stanley Cup ring, and that's something you can't accomplish on the agency side of things. So, was that a driving factor in kind of transitioning from the agency side to the team side?
Well, that certainly put it over the top. It's hard to see a Stanley Cup ring and not want that. Yeah, it was, like I said, I loved my time at KO, and I didn't really have any plans, to go anywhere. And then obviously COVID happened and kind of threw the whole world, for a loop, and that was a crazy time for everybody. And so then the players went back into the bubble, and then obviously, Bill got named the general manager of the Coyotes at the time, and I guess I had explored other opportunities in the past, and nothing really felt quite right, like the right opportunity. And then I knew Bill a little bit just throughout the years. He had drafted like Ian Cole, who was one of our players who actually now plays for the Mammoth, Jordan Schmaltz, Nick Schmaltz's brother. So we'd cross paths, a little bit, but I didn't know him very well. But one of my mentors, who you mentioned earlier on this, is Ryan Miller, who's the assistant GM for the Blues. And so him and Bill were obviously very close. They worked together for, 10, 12 years. And so when Bill left the Blues, I think he was asking Ryan for, people that might be able to help him, do what Ryan does in St. Louis. And so Ryan asked me, you want to talk to Bill? And I said, sure, it can't hurt to explore the opportunity. And my wife and I are both from Los Angeles, so being back in Arizona was a little bit closer to home too. So it seemed like a good opportunity. It seemed like a really good fit. And then, Bill had him and his wife flew my wife and I out for dinner, and he put a Stanley Cup ring in my hand and said, "You're never going to get this on that side." And I said, "That's a fair argument." So from that point on, I was sold, and it's hard, when you're a little kid. I'm sure you did too. Like you want to win the Stanley Cup. That's everybody's dream, right? And so that is the one thing as an agent that you can't really do. And I'm excited to keep pursuing that opportunity here.
Yeah, and then for you as like now you've been there for a few years now. You went from Arizona to both Utah. Are you kind of doing a lot of the similar things you were doing on the agency side, just on the team side, where you're kind of still dealing with the contract side of things, but you're also trying to manage the salary cap from the team side, trying to find that right value for different players, and also managing all the contracts, all the paperwork that goes into registering players and things like that?
Yeah, 100%. It's similar to the agent side. I think the main differences are, when you're on the agent side, you've got multiple clients, so you've got competing interests, but you've got, you're really only focused on, if you've got one guy on one team, you're focused on that player, right? And you're trying to do the best for that client. You're trying to get him not necessarily the most money, but in the best situation, the longest term contract, whatever it may be. And it might have implications on other clients, but more than likely it won't. On our side, that's kind of, I think, the biggest thing that I've learned is, really every decision you make, every signing, every trade, has an impact on the next thing, and the domino falls, right? So most of the stuff I do is very similar, just from the other side. I handle like the budgets and things like that here, the not so exciting parts of the business, which I didn't have to do at the agency side. But as far as the contract negotiations and the arbitration briefs, we still prepare all that in house. And then I guess the other big thing is on the agency, at least with KO. It's a boutique style agency, so it's a small business, right? Kurt started it, and he's the founder and CEO. Here it's a massive, corporation, right? So we've got 70, 80 employees just in hockey ops, and then you've got, all the business side people too, right? So everybody's pulling at the same string, but it's it's different in the sense that you're really a part of the team, and everybody's got a common goal that you're working for, and so that's kind of been the most rewarding part for sure.
Yeah. One thing you brought up that I did want to talk about is the arbitration briefs and the arbitration cases, because when you're an agent on one side, you're kind of arguing to maximize the amount of money your players are getting. But then on the team side, you're trying to limit that because you're trying to manage the salary cap. You're looking at the whole picture of the team. You want them to be competitive and successful, but you also want to have the respect of the players, because at the end of the day, they're going to be on your team, and they're hopefully key parts of your team that are going to help compete and win with you for a long period of time. How do you manage like those conflicting areas, and also like how did it help you on the agency side to understand what you're arguing for, to help you now on the team side to understand what to defend against?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It is a unique process. Typically in a contract negotiation, the player isn't involved. Realistically, it's the GM or me dealing with the agent or somebody on their side, and the player's kind of kept out of it for the most part. I'm sure he's talking to his agent, but not really with us. And then you go into an arbitration, and the player's present, like, so he's hearing everything you're saying about him. You have to exchange briefs 48 hours before, so he's read that. And it is, I mean, it's tough. I think the biggest thing that I learned on the agent side, that I try to take over to this side, is that you have to separate the business from the personal and the friendship, right? Like, at the end of the day, these players are employees of SEG and the Utah Mammoth, right? And so they're due a certain amount of money, and we base everything off comparable players, whether in arbitration or not. And so it's again distinguishing now that they're they work for us, and they're a part of our team, versus the friendship side, right? Like, you get to know these guys. I've been here 6 years now. I've seen Lawson Krause have a baby, and Nick Schmaltz I've known since he was 14 years old, because I knew him on the agency side, and now he's played for us for the last 6 years. And so you get to know these guys, and you get to know their families, and especially with the move here, you don't often move with 70 people that at the same time. So it's delicate, and I think they have to understand that, and a little bit is on, I think that's one thing we did pretty well at KO, was to kind of talk to our clients and make sure that they were aware that, hey, there's nothing personal here. Like, they're doing a job, we're doing our job, we're trying to get you the most money, they got a team to build, right? And so it's the same thing on our side now. Like, we've got a team to build. We're not saying that you're worth zero, we're just saying that these are the 5 players that you're like, and this is what they make, and this is what we think you should make. And so we try to take the sting out of it as much as we can, and negotiate without a scar, and at the end of the day, these guys got to come back and play for us and bleed for us, and give up, risk their bodies for us, right, and their lives for us. So it's a lot that we're asking them to do, and we're just we're trying to do our job at the same time, and hope that they can respect that.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. And even if you look at what happened with the Boston Bruins and Jeremy Swayman last year, like, great goaltender, ended up signing a long-term deal, but you could tell it had some effect on him and how he played in the beginning of the season. So even though there is a business element to it, these players are human at the end of the day, and they want to hear positive things and not necessarily the negative that you have to bring out as part of your job, trying to manage the team and looking for the future of the whole team.
Exactly. And I don't know what the statistic is anymore, but at one point it was like, I think guys that go through arbitration are usually traded or somehow not on that team within, I think it's like 85% of guys that go through ARB are not on that team within like 2 or 3 years. It is, I mean, it is a contentious process. You're in a boardroom in a hotel in Toronto, and it's everybody on the PA side's lined up on this side, everybody on the team side's lined up on that side, and you're staring a guy in the face and telling him that he's not worth what he thinks he's worth. So it's it's an interesting situation. It's delicate for sure, like I said, but it's I think, like I said, they know what we're trying to do. We know what they're trying to do, and we go out for dinner after, and it is what it is. It's no different than guys go through a playoff series and they beat the hell out of each other for 7 games, and then they're buddies in the
They're shaking hands.
Yeah, they're right. Yeah, exactly. So it's the same. At least I hope so.
Yeah, and like you said too, once you build these personal relationships with these players, that makes it even more difficult. I did want to bring up one thing you mentioned too, was the move, right? So we're now in year 2 in Utah. We got the Mammoth as the team name now, but prior to Utah, you guys were in Arizona, and then Ryan Smith ended up buying the franchise as an expansion franchise, but he brought over the entire hockey operations department and the team. So I'd love to hear kind of the logistics behind that move. Like, was there ever a thought that maybe you wouldn't move from Arizona to Utah with the team, or you kind of, once Bill was all on board and everyone kind of stood in line and understood that we were all going to move over together?
Yeah, we were pretty much right from the get-go. We were on board and ready to go. We loved our time in Arizona and appreciate everything that we had there. But we knew that things were changing, and if you don't change, you're out of luck, right? So we were excited to come to Utah. I think probably 90% of the people within our organization had never been here or never spent quite a bit of time here. So Ryan and Ashley, they flew our whole organization out, like, I think 2 days right after our season ended that year, and we got to see the city and see the arena, and I think there was 10,000 people at Delta Center waiting outside just to meet us, with another 5,000 outside that couldn't get in the building. So it was an incredible whirlwind of a year for sure. Everything happened super fast. Like I said, I think the news came out like when we were on our last road trip there, right? And then we were on a plane right after the season. So from that point on, it was figuring out the moving trucks and the logistics and all that. And I think it's somewhat similar to like a residential move. You don't realize how much stuff you have until you're moving, right? So we got to move our gym and our equipment and our medical and just everything that goes into it, the locker room, everything that's it was a lot. I mean, it was a lot of stuff, and we had some unbelievable people that kind of took the helm of that uh, and really did a lot of work to get us here and get us here on time. Um, but it was, on the other side of it, it's not just the physical things. It's, you're uprooting people's lives, right? It's our players, it's our staff. It's, some of our staff had been in Arizona the whole time that the Coyotes were there, right? 25, 30 years. Some of our players were drafted, Clayton Keller, Lawson Krause, were there the entire time, right? So um, it's, we got kids in schools and poor Erin Bolello, she's our director of hockey administration. She had to do, I think, 68 visas, for all the staff and players to be eligible to work in Utah. So it was a lot. But, super thankful for the opportunity and excited to be here.
Yeah, there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff. Like I don't think people realize happen that, like you mentioned, like 68 visas, like getting all that stuff. Like you're uprooting families who have children in schools to new schools in Utah. They're losing all their friends that they made. So as simple as it sounds on the high level, there's a lot that goes in behind the scenes.
It was anything but simple, I can tell you. On a personal level, my wife was, I think, like 4 or 5 months pregnant at the time, so we had that going on too. So it was like I said, it was a lot. Um, but you know, like I think what made it all worth it and what allowed everybody to get through it was the reception that we got here. Ryan and Ashley have been unbelievable with all the renovations to the Delta Center. They built a temporary practice facility for us in like 3 months that was unreal, and now we have a permanent practice facility that we're just moving into, that is state of the art. And then on top of that, you've got all the fans that have welcomed us, and just hockey's kind of taken over Salt Lake City and Utah as a whole. It's the talk of the town. Everybody's super nice here. It's a nice place to live. There's great weather. Park City's 30 minutes away. Like there's no reason that it shouldn't be a top destination in the NHL. And I think when guys, Arizona is a tough place to leave because of it's nice weather and it's warm in December.
Golf 24/7.
Yeah, exactly. But when you get here, there's a lot to like here, and it's a beautiful place. And I think we're all just excited to be here. And now we're the Mammoth, and we're excited for stage 2 here.
Love it. And I think the ownership piece is important too. Like Ryan Smith, I don't know him personally, but I've only heard positive things, both how he invests in the team, but also how he builds that relationship with all the people that work for him, and also how he's willing to win at all costs. So he's willing to write an open check and let you guys do whatever you need to do in order to make those strides and kind of compete at a high level.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. He's like he's a personable guy, so he can just come and talk to the players. He does it with the Jazz too. He does it with our players. He does it with our staff. He comes through, takes a tour of the gym, and wants to know what the machines do. Like he's invested. He's interested, and he's excited, and I think we're all excited. And yeah, it's been a breath of fresh air, and it's been awesome to be a part of it. We keep joking around like at some point, they're going to say no to something, but right now they have it, and it's just we have all the resources that we could ever want. And so now, we're stressing this to our players too. Like now it's your time to go prove it on the ice, because you've got everything you need now, right? There's no excuses anymore. We've been given what we wanted, what we needed, and what's going to help us get to the next, step. And so here we go.
100%. And that leads into what I want to talk about next. So, season one in Utah, you guys had 89 points, 7 points outside of a playoff spot. So, you guys were pretty competitive all the way up until the end of the season. If we want to take a look at the graphic here on the screen for the team preview for this season, you guys obviously had some big moves in the offseason. We'll talk about the JJ Peterka deal in a second. He was the biggest add for Utah. You guys got about 6.6 million in cap space, a lot of draft capital to work with. Some other ads, you added Tanev in the bottom six, Nate Schmidt, who just won a Stanley Cup with Florida. You guys signed to a 3-year deal. You lost, obviously, McKelly, who went to Toronto. Kesselring and Doan were included in the trade with for JJ Peterka. How do you feel about this season? What are your kind of goals, expectations, and also how are you going to manage that cap with $6.6 million in cap space for this upcoming season?
Yeah, we're excited. We're excited to, like I said, kind of take the next step as an organization. We feel like we've made some impactful moves in areas of need. JJ Peterka is going to be, an instant add to our top six to give us some more scoring, which we lacked a little bit last year. We think Nate Schmidt can help us on the back end, give us a little bit of stability back there. We had, a few injuries last year with Jersey and Marino going down for long stretches, so we're a little bit more insulated there now. And obviously he's coming off a Stanley Cup, and same with Vitek Vanacek as our backup goalie there in Florida. So, and then, Brandon Tanev adds a little bit of, bite on our fourth line and a little bit of jam and energy. So we're excited. Obviously it was tough to lose Donor and Kess. They're big parts of our team and big parts of our culture. I think they're very well liked here. But we always say it's going to hurt when you got to make a move and add something good too, right? So to add what we added, I think it's the the next step of our team. We're evolving. We're out of the rebuild now. We're kind of into the build, and we've got $6.68 million in cap space projected, like you said. So we've still got some room to add if we need to. But we're really excited about the group that we have going into the year. And I think the sky's the limit. We're trying not to set, obviously you set goals, but we don't want those goals to limit our guys either, right? It's not just, being better than we were last year, getting to 90 points or whatever it is. The sky's the limit. Let's see what we can do. Right. So, there's a buzz in the rink, not just because it's brand new and smells brand new, but everybody's excited to be back. Most of the guys are back in town now, and you can tell that there's just a little bit of a different feeling this year, that we're maturing as a team and we're ready to go.
I think I'm most excited for the Brandon Tanev beginning of season photo. I don't know if you've seen his previous photos, but that'll be a good start to the Utah Mammoth brand. One other thing I did want to talk about is the JJ Peterka deal. So if we can get that other graphic up on the screen here. So like we mentioned in the offseason, so this kind of move has a lot of moving parts because it's a trade, but then also he's a restricted free agent. So you also have to lock down a deal. Offline, you said you had about 3 hours to get this deal together. So you guys traded for JJ Peterka, and you gave Buffalo Josh Doan and Michael Kesselring. It seemed like Buffalo really coveted Michael Kesselring because of his handedness and back end defense ability. And then also you guys signed JJ Peterka to a 5-year, $38.5 million deal, average annual value of $7.7 million. For those RFA deals, 5 years isn't necessarily the conventional term on those deals. Usually you'll see about a 2 to 3 year bridge deal so that the team remains has the RFA control after the fact, or you'll see them go longer term, like 6, 7, 8 years deal that goes well into UFA. So kind of what went through just the organizational aspect to, one, agree upon the trade, but then two, really hammer out this deal with JJ Peterka in such a short period of time.
Yeah, it's interesting. Every trade, every signing, every transaction really is a little bit different. This one, sometimes we put months of work into, we know there's a team that's going to be a seller at the deadline, so we're looking at their players, and we have scouts going to watch and make sure which guys we like, who we're really passionate about. Obviously, we knew JJ Peterka. We didn't think really that he would be available, or that we'd have an opportunity to get him, and it came to fruition, I would say, rather quickly, probably out of the into the draft there. Right before the draft is when it really picked up between Bill and Kevin Adams there. And yeah, it was kind of a back and forth, and like you said, we knew that they coveted Kess, and what's not to like. He's a big right shot defenseman, so it made sense. It fit what they needed. And then Josh Doan is another piece that they can build around, a young player that kind of fits into their timeline too. So those were tough pieces for us to give up, but we understood why they were asking for it, and giving up a great player in JJ Peterka. And then it was so we kind of I guess set the price, and not the price, but we set the comparable trades, and we knew who was gonna be involved in it. We kind of set we figured out who were the main pieces of the trade, and once we agreed to that, then Buffalo gave us basically a window to talk to the agent and try to work out a deal, and we had to do it in quick fashion. So it was 5 years for us was a good term. we were excited about that, to have him, locked in. There were some other deals that were kind of getting done with that same, term length. So we knew that was, the value was pretty accurate for that type of term. So, we talked about, 2 years, 3 years, 7 years, 8 years, whatever. But when you're dealing in a short window like that, you got to get something done. We did our best to get the value that we thought was appropriate for that term. And we worked with the agent, we got it done. And then luckily we were able to pull the trade off. So it was an exciting day for the franchise. Like I said, we think JJ is going to help us immensely in our top six and going to play a huge role in our team moving forward. So we're very excited.
Yeah, like you mentioned, you guys needed some help with scoring. JJ should fit seamlessly on the wing in the top six. 68 points last year in 77 games, 27 goals. So hopefully he can add some scoring help to Utah. And, we'll see what happens as the season progresses. Another question I did want to ask you is the new CBA. So the new CBA has been ratified. It seems like last week came out that some of the parts of the CBA are actually going to be in effect for this season, while some are still going to kind of push out to the following season, such as the max term limit on contracts. But there's a playoff cap this year. There's changes to LTIR. There's no longer double retention at the trade deadline. So cap space kind of becomes a little less valuable from that perspective. As a capologist, what do you have to focus on understanding all these changes kind of, on the fly, as it seems like teams were kind of surprised at all this stuff happening right away?
Yeah, I think you guys might have had it before we did, but no, it was. You know what? It's basically everything you just mentioned is the crux of it, right? I think that there's going to be some intricacies that we're a little bit we're going to learn on the fly here too, and see how how teams maneuver certain things, with like the paper transactions and things of that nature. So it's going to be harder to accrue cap space, but like you said, that might not be as important anymore because of the playoff cap. I think the LTI, there's going to be a lot of questions, and I think a lot of issues raised as we go, just to see how it works. And if a guy comes back early, then does that change the cap calculation? If you thought he was out for the year, that sort of thing. So it'll be interesting. It's going to be it feels a little bit like the Wild West right now. Everybody's trying to kind of grasp their arms around this thing and figure out what are the super important details. What do we need to focus on? How do we navigate these new waters for the best interest of the team? But I think at the end of the day, the goal is still the same, right? We're trying to, ice the best team that we can and put ourselves in a position to win. And so, there's going to be a few more, Excel calculations with our associates in the background, because now we have to probably figure out two different cap numbers in season and a playoff cap. But I think, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be fun. And we're navigating it like everybody else.
Exactly. There's not a team doesn't have an advantage because it's happening to everyone at the same time, and it's just really how quickly you can adapt to these new changes. Well, David, this has been awesome. We really appreciate it. Just one final question we ask all our last guests. It's the cool bet question. If you go to puckpedia.com/coolbet, you can get in on the action today. Stay cool, bet responsibly. I just want to know if you have any advice for people, both either trying to navigate either the hockey agency side of things or the hockey operations side of things. As someone who has experience on both sides, like what kind of advice would you have for someone who's a little bit younger, maybe coming out of undergrad or law school or a grad degree, that wants to get in on the hockey side of things, or just someone who's a really big fan that might not have necessarily the background or the skill set provided for these kinds of roles?
Yeah, you know what? It's a good question. I think, you kind of have to be ready and willing to do anything that's asked of you. I would say, advice like reach out to as many people as you can, email them, LinkedIn, works sometimes too. I think, you might hear no 99 times, but it just takes one person to say yes. And, that's how I got in, right? I was an intern for 2 years, and then, went on my way there. We've got an internship program here through the University of Utah. We had one at KO through the University of Denver. So I think, you got to be willing, like I said, to take a chance. And then when you get that chance, you've got to go above and beyond. You should be the first one at the office. You should be the last one to leave. Like, it's all the cliches that people say, but it's the truth. And, it's we're pretty lucky to work in this field, and it's a unique field to work in. There's 32 of these jobs, 32 teams in the world. And so you've got to separate yourself, and however, you can best figure out how to do that is what's going to set you apart and get you where you want to go.
Well, awesome. That was a great answer. I hope our listeners can take that to heart and hopefully helps them progress in their careers. We thank you for the time, David, and best of luck to the Utah Mammoth this season. Hopefully you guys are competing long into April and beyond.
Here we go. Thank you. Thanks for having me, Keith. Appreciate it.
PuckPedia.com